Do-do-do-do-do-do.
Was that great last night?
I know what you're thinking. Why am I sitting here talking to that empty chair over there? Because Jim said he couldn't come again today.
It's too bad.
Well, let me say a few things to you, Jim. Well, you know, that had kind of mixed reviews, but I enjoyed. We're of course talking about Clint Eastwood at the convention last night. I enjoyed it tremendously. I thought it was like kind of a stream of consciousness improv. And as some people pointed out, he was kind of channeling Jimmy Stewart and Harvey. You know,
Yeah,
you know, he's doing the what did you say?
Thank you, sir.
And I mean, if you can see Clint Eastwood doing Jimmy Stewart, but what the heck, they're both all Americans, right?
Absolutely.
Wow.
Now, do they have copyrights to the theme from The Good and the Bad and the Ugly to be played in Bulgaria?
I think, yeah. Usually, when they have these national conventions, they do have either an ASCAP thing or something like that. So
We'll have to get one someday.
yeah, we could do that.
Do that.
We could do that. Wow.
That was. They said they were going to have a surprise, and they did.
Whew. You just got.
You made some good points.
When a guy's not doing the job, you just gotta let him go. That was a great line.
They do. And this is a great opportunity to do that.
Now, I mean, conventions, especially preordained conventions, are always scripted. Completely scripted from beginning to end usually, and this one was. But I gotta say, I've seen a lot of scripted conventions, and I've been to one actually, and you couldn't get one much better scripted than this one. It was smooth. It built. They thought about their themes. They got their themes in. They had the right people speaking that were able to deliver their particular messages, and it was masterful. And frankly, it bodes well for the organizational skills of the people behind it. It seems to me. Yeah.
Absolutely. You're right about having the right people there saying the right things, and I think they were very careful about making sure that each had their role. They knew what it was, and as you said, the scripted. They stuck to the script to ensure maximum delivery and heightened understanding of what they were trying to accomplish.
Well, with one exception, the guy who speaks for the people and not the politicians.
Yeah.
Oh man. I mean, I know it's hokey, but dragging those real people out to tell the real Mitt Romney stories was incredibly moving. It really was. And that one couple whose son died, their 14-year-old son died. They lived in Medford, which is where my brother lives. My brother Sean. They were formerly known as Dr. Trash. That's family friend. Oh, I'm sorry. I revealed his secret identity. Well, we're gonna have to erase that part later. Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, there was highlight after highlight. You
know, and they were fortunate. They've had that chair has been vacant for 3.5 years, so it was well used, that vacant chair.
Oh, and did you see what Mr. I'm Not Watching the Convention did? Right after the Eastwood thing, he tweets a photograph of himself in the presidential chair from the back. It says the president on it.
Yeah, this chair is occupied.
This chair is occupied.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, that's so 6th grade, for God's sake.
Oh.
You know, both sides get good humorous jabs in at each other usually at these conventions, and you know, you take it in good sport because that's what it is. I remember watching Jesse Jackson, not one of my particular heroes, But I think it was at the '80 Democratic Convention. He was in good form. You know, he had his patter going, and as a matter of fact, a bunch of us Reagan delegates were watching it together, and he was talking about the rights of the disabled and stuff like that. He says, "I'd rather have Roosevelt in a wheelchair than Reagan on a horse," which was a good line, and we all laughed and appreciated it. You know. So,
well, yeah, you have to be willing to take it because
Teddy Kennedy gave a hell of a speech that year, and you know, he's notwithstanding our relationship. Our blood relationship. I've never been a great fan of his, but it was, you got to acknowledge, you know, when they do what they do, whether you agree with them or not. When they do it well, you know.
Yeah, and it's
Cuomo's was a classic.
It's great theater.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes theater of the absurd, but that's coming up.
But still, you appreciate it on its own level.
Yeah. And I think it almost appears now that these conventions are kind of like...
Did I turn that on?
You were playing with it earlier, and I presumed what you were doing.
I did this again. I did this last week, but I always got to be sure because we did miss that. Yeah, that's it. Okay.
That, you know, as opposed to in years gone by where the convention was part of the process, it almost seems like it's kind of plugged in and dropped in someplace, because this process goes on for so long prior to.
Right.
And
in the old days, it was the process.
It was,
yeah.
and you know, there is no surprise. You know, anticipate who's going to. You know who's going to get it, so they have to build around that. And it's been a long time. I mean, it started last fall, and it's going to culminate in a couple more months. It's just a long process for the American people to endure.
And really, when you say it started last fall, they were campaigning for a full year because the early votes were coming in like in December, weren't they?
Yeah, they've made the process not more tedious necessarily, but
stretched it out.
They sure stretch it out, and the American people, there's periods that they just tune out.
Right.
They turn out because it doesn't. You know, now from here to the end, people will be paying attention, but these guys have been stumping for so long, saying the same things.
Right.
You know, waiting for somebody to use a improper word someplace and hang their hat on that, which is ludicrous. You know, but nothing goes unheard or unseen today, and it makes the process a lot more. I think it dulls it.
Oh, absolutely. But on the other hand, this is when people really do start paying attention.
Well,
one of the reasons I don't like early primaries is that they're over and the nominees picked before people are really tuned into the process. Mm-hmm. That being said, and early polls mean nothing, absolutely nothing. You know, I found after the what was it? It was a 2000 election, right? That ended up with the 2-month cliffhanger.
Yeah.
After that election, I was going through some old emails I had, and somebody 3 years earlier had sent me a news article on the polling for the presidential race in 3 years. And among the possibilities they listed was George Bush versus Al Gore. And the polling 3 years earlier had it at a dead heat. And I said, what the hell did they spend all this money for, and all that time and all that effort, when they ended up in exactly the same place they were 3 years earlier? Ultimately, they didn't change a single mind on average.
No. And then every time you hear a poll, it's a poll of the most likely voters who had not made up their mind if they're going to vote. I mean, they got so many qualifiers that it loses the impact that they're looking to have. Yeah. And I think that hurts the process.
Yeah, I mean, and you don't know don't know whether you're comparing apples to oranges. And there's one of these outfits that does a running average of all the polls, and that means nothing.
An average of the averages.
Yeah, an average of the averages. I mean, it can mean something if they're all doing it the same way. Then you get a bigger sampling maybe. But some people poll all potential voters. Most of the national polls up until now have only been polling registered voters. And we know that registered voters, 40% of them, even of the ones that are registered, don't show up to vote.
Right.
Rasmussen has always polled likely voters, which is people who have voted most of the last 5 elections and things like that. But even then, they do a telephone survey, and these days, a lot of people don't have telephones. They got cell phones, unlisted cell phones, and so you're not reaching.
No, it's a very limited group here.
You can get a feeling of shifts, maybe, but.
And I think people are so tired of these robocalls that you get.
Oh my God!
Selling stuff. I mean, can I take a few minutes of your time about it? No, thank you. Or they just boom, boom, boom to get it over with.
No, we've been on a do not call list for years, and we must get 10 calls a day.
And it's gotten worse in the last 2 years, I think, too.
Oh.
That new do not call list, I think, really worked beginning, but now there's so many variables to it that.
Well, one of the exceptions they built into it was for politicians. So if people are calling, doing political polling, or calling to ask you to vote for a candidate, they're exempt. All you can do is recognize the number and don't answer.
Grin and bear.
Yeah. When you trip over 6 things to get to the phone, and then it's some survey from Washington State, which calls every day.
So what do you think? One impact on this convention is it going to have on the Democratic convention? Are they going to play to counteract it, or are they going to with what they originally planned and put it out there and let people make comparison? Or are they going to focus in on this one and try to counterpunch everything that was done?
Well, I think they're just going to stick with their original plan, which is to just trash the other side. I think they're making a huge tactical error, but I hope they're not watching, because I want them to go ahead and do this. But in that they're planning on emphasizing gay marriage, abortion, all these things where those people are already in their pocket. Instead of going for the undecided, that's why I think the Romney convention was so carefully crafted, because they were really going after the people who
they weren't going after their base,
who are undecided for whatever reason. A lot of the reason people are undecided, first of all, if they're undecided, that means they've already given up on Obama, pretty much. So those are all potential Romney supporters. Now, why isn't Romney getting them? A lot of the reason is all the negative ads and about what a wicked rich businessman he is, and all that stuff. And this convention was carefully geared to showing the human side of Mitt Romney, and he does have a human side. I think he's a good man. I thought less of that during the primaries, when his aides were running these hugely negative ads against his opponents. But I think you get Mitt Romney the man, and you see a guy who lives what he believes. I don't know if we discussed this last week, but there was a list of all the things that Romney has done for free, including 4 years as governor of Massachusetts, and of course the Democrats will immediately jump up. He paid 0% taxes on his governor's salary.
Yeah,
yeah, because he took nothing. He did that Olympic thing, which was a long nightmare, a lot of hard work, and he did that for free, and that really was an impressive performance. He worked for like, I don't know, 4 or 8 years as an aide to his father, governor of Michigan, for free. He did a couple of years as a Mormon missionary. They started adding up. It added up to like 28 free years worth of work we've gotten out of this guy already. It's quite incredible.
Yeah, and I think the Democratic tact of going after success is really going to blow up in their face in the end.
Yeah.
Because no matter how you try to cut it, the opportunity that we present here in America is to allow people a chance and an opportunity and a venue to become successful. And to denigrate success
Right.
on at this level that they're going after, I think is very divisive for the country, and I think it's a real disservice because
And it's morally wrong.
we are what we are because people have worked hard to become successful, and then to cast a stone at all the people
Yeah.
who've done those things.
That's not a bad thing. It's a great thing.
Absolutely, because everybody has that. I don't care that everybody does have that opportunity.
Yeah.
They walk into that school the first day, and they have an opportunity to lay the base to
It's
become
the
successful.
principal talking again. He's giving his first day of school speech.
And that's what it is. And there's people who take advantage of that and those who don't. But don't be angry with me because I took advantage of something and you chose not to. You know, and we need programs to continue supporting that, to allow people to be successful. But to denigrate those people who are successful, who are contributing, is wrong.
There's a lot of things in his life story that I admire, and one of them is, well, first of all, let's go back to his father. I was not a great fan of George Romney's, but you got to admire the George Romney story. I mean, this guy came from absolutely nothing, and you can't even figure it. And he didn't come from nothing at a time when, you know, like Edison came from nothing. He came from a time when everybody who was in the auto business was already rich and on top, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes, they were.
And you know, and he starts out as a rough plasterer and ends up running American Motors at a time when American Motors was making money. He took a essentially bankrupt company and came up with the Rambler and turned the company around. They eventually sold out to Chrysler, I think, at some point, but that was after his time. And you know, then goes on to become governor of Michigan and a candidate for president. I mean,
That's nothing.
That's a pretty remarkable life story right there.
Absolutely.
Now, Mitt comes in, a great fan of his father's, obviously, probably of all the first generation Romney kids, he was probably the closest to his father, worked with him politically, worked with him in the car company. And there just came a point when he said, I want to make it on my own. I don't want to do it from nepotism. And he goes out and he lives like like one of my kids going to college, and gets married and is making it on his own, and then works it up to while he's doing all this other free stuff, he works it up into one of the great fortunes of the country. I mean, he's got like a $500 million or something like that. Yeah. He's a half a billionaire or a quarter billionaire or something like that.
He's got some change in his pocket.
Got some change in his pocket. And it doesn't seem to have changed him whatsoever, other than he's got some nice houses. But that's okay. The wife, who I'd never really seen much of until she gave her speech the other night. That was
she did
fantastic.
A really, really nice job. And that's a hard job for an average person to get up.
You better believe it.
I think of her, and after all the things I've read about her, she is an average person. Okay, she's not.
She came from, as she said, the granddaughter of a Welsh coal miner. And they're both 2 generations removed from dirt poverty. Just amazing.
Yeah. And I think she's going to be a wonderful advocate for him. I think she's going to be a wonderful advocate for the platform and the values that he is projecting and possesses.
Carl Cameron of Fox had the greatest description of her. I guess you'd call it a metaphor. He says, She reminds you of your best friend's mother, who would always give you a cookie and then tell you to tuck in your shirt. Isn't that
There
great?
you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see that. I
Yeah.
can see that with her.
Tuck in your
Absolutely.
shirt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just,
You owe it to the world to tuck in your shirt.
there you go.
Or as my den mother used to say, a good Cub Scout always washes his hands after going to the toilet. That's,
Who was your dead mother?
that was outside of Albany.
Oh, okay.
She's still alive. She's, gosh, she's got to be 90 something.
Yeah, it should have to be. 'Cause we're almost.
We're
almost 60.
She and my mother were good friends even long after we moved here. They were going on vacations together after my father died. Yeah.
Good thing. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with the Democratic convention one night.
So I don't know where to start with the highlights. Let's see. I can't even remember which was which night. I guess Mrs. Romney was the first night.
Yeah. She was Tuesday.
That was a home run.
Ryan was Wednesday.
Well, yeah. And you had the string of also-rans for vice president. It was like one after another after another. You know, the people who were on the short list for vice president all got their talks.
I thought personally the best was Condoleezza Rice.
That was pretty fantastic.
I thought that was
You know,
that was a grand slam. That wasn't a home run. It was
you know,
a bomb.
I've heard her do her personal story before, and she did a much shortened version of it this time. But you know, talking about growing up in Jim Crow Birmingham, Alabama, and the last time she told the story, it was about the Democrats who gave us Jim Crow, you know, and why she was why she was against gun control, because it was the only thing that we had to protect ourselves, you know, from the authority of the state. Anyway, her line about her mother telling her, even though you can't get a hamburger at Woolworth's, you can be president of the United States, was pretty sensational.
Pretty close. She was,
And meanwhile, you know, over on MSNBC, crazy Chris Matthews. I mean, he's just getting wackier the older he gets. You know, he used to be kind of a reasonable, you know, Tip O'Neill kind of, who he used to work for, a Democrat. And he's just gotten just wackier, drinking the Kool-Aid, and everything to him now is racist. Everything he hears is racist.
he's so full of himself.
And he's so full of himself, you know. Now he says the word Chicago is racist. If you say Chicago, that's racist. As somebody said, you know, when I hear Chicago, I think of Mrs. O'Leary, I think of the Dailies, I think of Ernie Banks. You know, the word, you know, racism just is.
No.
And one of them said, I don't know if it was him, but it was, you know, somebody's developing a whole list of things that are now racist. You know, you can't say hold the fort, that's racist. Yeah, I don't know. I don't even get it.
Must be anti-Native American.
When you somebody had said something about comparing Obama to European socialism or something like that, and that was racist. If you compare him to white Europeans, if they're saying he agrees with white Europeans, that's racist. You know, apparently it's all they got is to play the race card. MSNBC was going crazy, running the theme, the racism theme, the Republicans are all racist, Republicans are racist, to the extent that they didn't show a single one of the minority speakers. You know, they didn't show Arthur Davis, the black congressman, the former congressman, and all the Hispanics, and the Mrs. Love from Utah there running for Congress. All of whom gave nice speeches. You know who surprised me was that Susana Martinez, the governor of New Mexico.
Yeah.
Boy, she was feisty. That was really enjoyable.
She has some fire in her belly.
She has fire in her belly. She, you know.
They when you say this is all racist, people dislike Obama because of what he has done, not because of what color he is. And if he were a white or anything else and was doing the same thing,
he'd have about 10%
and people wouldn't like him then either.
Yeah.
It's what he has done. You know, he is the one who's highlighted his ethnicity more than the people who are opposing. People are opposing because of what he has done, not because of the color.
Did you see
of his
Ted
skin.
Cruz? He was on one of the early hours, I think, on the first night. Boy, is he impressive! Wow. I mean, he is one smart guy, and he had them pull the podium down. You know, the podium disappears, and
Yeah.
it was rising to the heights of the different people too. I don't know if you noticed that. But he had the podium go down, and he just stood on the stage without a teleprompter and did like Nixon used to do, and gave a real good speech.
What do you think of Chris Christie?
I thought it was wonderful. He got panned by some people. He was Chris Christie, you know, and that's who he is, and he connects. And you know, somebody like somebody who doesn't get it, like say Tony Benjamin, just didn't get it. Well, it's on the tradition of the Cuomo address. You know, come on. Chris Christie is Chris Christie, and he delivers the blue collar sensation better than anybody.
The guy sitting at the bar having a beer.
Yeah. Yeah, or the guy who's sitting in front of you at the ball game and blocking your view.
You can't see around him. Yeah, absolutely.
But the one thing the Republicans showed off was the deep bench that they have. These, and they didn't have for a long time, and that's how we got, a pretty weak field seeking the presidential nomination.
Not only is it deep, it's wide.
Yeah.
It encompasses.
And we're not
so
just
many,
talking about Christie.
No. Correct. You know, it covers so many different parts of society.
Right.
You know, and it covers everything that the Democrats try to point and say, well, you don't. Yeah, we do. You don't.
Yeah.
We do. Yeah. We have.
I'm sorry, we've got two dark-skinned people who are governors of southern states right now, both of Indian extraction, both who are incredibly impressive. Nikki Haley gave a wonderful speech, I thought, and it seems funny. You just don't expect that soft southern accent coming from someone who's his parents came from India. Bobby Jindal, of course, could not come to the convention because he was fighting his hurricane, but he's one hell of an impressive guy. You got Ted Cruz coming up. You got, of course, Marco Rubio, who is a super rising star. You can just keep going.
I think some of the pundits were so desperate, they were denigrating the Republicans for having their convention while all these things are going on.
While Tropical Storm Isaac is...
where's their concern? And one report...
You know what, I'd like to see another hurricane next week and see if they cancel it.
They said most of the speakers have expressed their concern and offering whatever help they can.
And prayers. Yeah.
Well, you don't want to do that.
I noticed God got a lot of cheers at but God always plays well at Republican conventions, and I'll bet she doesn't hardly get mentioned at the next one.
Well, I know the Cardinal isn't going to be there to mention him.
Oh yeah, he is. Yeah.
They decided to take him.
Yeah, they decided.
All?
I think they. Yeah, and now the something like I don't know, a quarter of the delegates at the Democratic conventions are part of the lesbian, gay, transgender, etc. coalition. And they're up in arms that Dolan's coming. They're far more upset about that than say Islamic terrorists.
You have to understand those people. I mean, they're misunderstood.
But yeah, so now they're talking about having a demonstration when Dolan comes. I thought he gave a nice prayer. What difficult circumstances. The balloons are still coming down. Everybody's cheering. That thing's like, it's all raucous. The band's playing. He comes to the podium, and they finally cut the music out, and he starts saying, but he got their attention real fast, and the balloons stopped popping. Wasn't it really adorable to see all those little kids from the families come out and play with the balloons? And there was a point where they were afraid they were losing the kids. The parents came down and started picking them up. Wait, is this yours? No, this one's mine. Because the Romney grandchildren are the same age as Ryan's kids. His wife looks about 14, doesn't she? Good-looking families there, I'll tell you.
Yeah.
Wow.
Big families. Good.
Yeah.
You know, think of the Sices or the Corrigans or the Smealys when you see those numbers out there. Holy mackerel! But I thought they did a real nice job of presentation over the entire all the nights of the campaign, and I think they really had an opportunity to get their point across and have people truly understand what they not only what they're trying to accomplish, but what needs to be accomplished. And I think that's important.
What's the earliest convention you remember?
I remember 64. I remember my grandmother worked for Nixon in 60, and I went down there a lot and passed out buttons and stuff. Right. I can't say I remember seeing it on TV at that time. 64, I was 12 years old then, and I paid a little bit more attention, and the fact that every station carried it every night, and you only got 3 stations didn't hurt. But I
and of course, it was the only thing that was on television. Right?
I remember asking my grandma in the 60s. I said, "How come Nixon has a lodge but Kennedy doesn't have a lodge? They don't have any place to go to on weekends?" It took me a while to get the comprehension. It was another person's name on there.
Well, and you'll appreciate this because your grandfather was the Grand Poobah of the Masons locally for a while. In 1960, I used to read everything I could about the election, and every time there was a headline that said "Welcome Lodge," I said, geez, Vice President to be Lodge is coming.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So Welcome Lodge are free and accepted Masons. So. That was my early. Believe it or not, I can remember the '56 Democratic convention. I think.
Really? You're only 5 years old then.
Yeah, I was 5 years old. And I think it probably sticks in my head because my grandparents had come to visit from Massachusetts, and they were staying at the Country Squire Motel down on the Carmen Road, and it's not there anymore. I think it's a Price Chopper now or something. But that was there for a long time. So I remember we went over to the motel, which was a few miles down the road from us, and they turned the TV on, and the convention was on. And I think I associated because it was the excitement of having my grandparents visit that I remember that. But 1960, I remember both conventions very well. When the Democratic convention in 1960, my parents were kind of rooting for Johnson, even though they were going to vote for Nixon. Here's another. We were talking about this earlier about this long process now. In those days, there were like 3 primaries, and that was it.
Yeah. And the decision was made at the convention.
Yeah. Wisconsin, West Virginia, New Hampshire. Not much else. Yeah, the decisions were made. Lyndon Johnson didn't announce his candidacy until 2 weeks before the convention, I think, and that was not considered unusual.
No.
Anyway, my brother and I are sleeping in the backyard. My parents had bought us a pup tent at the Montgomery Ward store down in Menands. Remember that place? God, that was great. Oh,
get down there. You get your soldiers, get your Mark's box of soldiers, the Civil War, the Alamo. That was great.
And we had, they had the catalog store. They had a regular store there, but they had the catalog store there. So you go in, you place your order on the catalog, and you could almost follow it as it came, through the warehouse and down the, down the shaft, and then that was fantastic. Anyway, we're in the backyard, and the TV is on in the house, and it's summer, so the windows are all open. And, Mr. Chairman, Alabama passes. Alabama yields to the great state of Texas for the purpose of I just thought the whole ritual was wonderful. I just loved that stuff. Guam, where America's day begins.
Sure, and everybody had to get their say in for their state, you know. It was,
Mr. Chairman,
now it's
the land of
scripted.
lakes and cheeses.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, the whole Chamber of Commerce thing was great. And the networks used to cover it gavel to gavel, but because that was considered an important part of the American process. And yeah, there were long infomercials for the party. Well, so what? This is an important thing we're doing, and you know what? You can't. And this year they were like interrupting in the middle of NBC didn't even show the big network didn't even show the first 4 minutes of Rubio's speech last night.
That's right. It came in the middle.
Yeah.
I can remember when we were talking about if I remember. I don't remember the convention in '60, but I remember being in school and there was 3 of us. Myself, Jeannie McGibbon, and Howie Massa were the only kids in our class that were
For Nixon. Yeah, there were out of 43 in my class, there were 6.
There's 3. Everybody else was,
I could
Kennedy,
name them today.
And it was like.
Well, yeah, we was kind of like and that was my first year in parochial school too. So I mean, I'm going to parochial school for the first time in 4th grade. And in the middle of, I'd gone from a brand new suburban public school outside of Albany into this ancient parochial school with
Dungeon
43
Hall.
kids in the classroom, and the old-fashioned desks. They used to go mush on the tracks.
Yeah.
And the inkwells, and the names carved in from your grandfather's generation. And the whole thing, because the nuns were so excited about Kennedy, and it was you almost got the feeling that they were telling you that your parents were going to go to hell if they didn't vote for Jack Kennedy and Bob Seiss that year.
Well, I think
that was the year of the Seiss-Tomlinson escapade.
Yeah, but it was it was an aura about the school that this event was bigger than anything that had ever happened. The fact that you have a Catholic running.
And now that we're a little older, I think we can appreciate how that must have felt, because the nuns, especially the older ones, had grown up in the era of where the Catholics were second class citizens.
That.
And the Republicans were the party of the WASPs and stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's kind of interesting that the party of the WASPs just nominated 2 guys who are not Protestants for the top positions.
Well, I hope they when Mitt wins, he does something with Condoleezza, because I think she has so much to offer the country. She is such a she is, and I was always a big fan of hers, and I wanted her to run for president the last time. And I don't know whether she just doesn't have the fire in her belly or what it is, but I think she's had a chance to restoke her fire since the last time she served in office, and I think she could do a lot. She's a tremendous role model.
Yes.
She represents an undercounted population. She with being women, she just does everything, and she's done everything that you can do
and
in a society where you're given it.
And she's a concert pianist.
Yeah, she is. Yeah. They did this thing on 60 Minutes when she was in before, and they showed her she can tickle the Irish pretty well.
Yeah. And when she was a kid, she was actually a playmate of those kids that were blown up in the Birmingham church bombing.
Really?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. They were playmates. So, she saw that.
She saw the work.
I mean, it wasn't just Jim Crow. I mean, she saw her friends murdered in that awful. Can't even can't even describe. I mean, it's hard to believe that it was that short a time ago. So I mean, you can understand why people who grew up in that generation are a little suspicious. But I've said this before. This whole Republicans are racist thing is such baloney. I'd be hard pressed. I mean, I've hung around with a lot of Republicans in my life. I'd be hard pressed to find a racist among them. I know a lot of racists, and almost all of them came out of the other party, which had a long tradition of it, obviously.
Yes.
I mean, I admire, you know, I really do admire guys like Hubert Humphrey, who had the guts to get up there and say, you know, this party has done this, played this game long enough. Let's put an end to it.
Yep.
And Johnson, who used the N-word freely, did push the civil rights law through, and he gets a lot of credit for that. But the Republican Party has no tradition of that whatsoever. And what ultimately happened is the Solid South, which had been solidly Democrat, had no reason to remain Democrat after a while. I mean, they were always pretty conservative on other issues.
Yes, they were.
And as the National Party got more left wing, and it got very left wing under Roosevelt, the Southern Democrats began aligning with the Republicans more often than not in the Congress on most issues, except for civil rights issues. The Civil Rights Law of 1964 would not have passed without the solid support of the Republicans. It was Everett Dirksen who got it through the Senate, because there were nowhere near enough Democrats to get it passed. Because most of the Democrats were Southerners in those days.
Dixie Democrats.
Dixie Democrats. So the natural conservative tendency of the Southerners began swinging to the Republican Party when they had nothing. The Democratic Party had nothing left to offer them.
Right.
And the racism factor didn't come with it. You don't see that in any of the Republicans who have been elected in the South. Holy God! I mean, you're going to say Nikki Haley is a racist? You're going to say Bobby Jindal is a racist? Is Marco Rubio a racist? Is Ted Cruz a racist? It's just total nonsense. Total nonsense. You know. If I were an African American, I could see why I would be voting for Obama in the last election. I can understand that. You know, we've waited long enough. He's the best we got. We're going to do it. I don't see a reason to do it now. You've made your point. Yeah, because he certainly hasn't been good for them or for anybody else.
No, and I don't think it has anything to do with his race.
Who was it? Was it Ryan? Yeah, it was Ryan. Boy, he had some good lines in there. The one about it's like sailing a boat using yesterday's wind.
Yeah, that's a good line.
That's
a good line.
Great line.
Absolutely.
Wow.
You know, and I think Obama has clearly demonstrated he has no plan nor process to get to where his plan goes. It's made up on the fly. And when you make up things on the fly, lots of things that you do impede other things you want to do, and that's exactly what he's done. There's been a complete reversal of what he believes needs to be done has happened because of his policies and his pieces of legislation. I think he's gotten some real bad advice. I think he's taken advice from a lot of the wrong people, and he hasn't been able to coalesce his view into something that is doable, sustainable, and needed.
And let's face it, he's essentially been lazy.
Well, he does nothing more than occupy that seat. He does not utilize the seat that he has.
Right.
It's occupied. That's it.
Yeah, I mean, I love the Peggy Noonan line about why is he trying so hard to become president? If he wants to be president, all he has to do is be president.
You know, he looks like some guy out the country club when you see him. I mean, there's a certain degree of dignity that the office projects and a person has to bring to that position, and he has not done that. And we've had other presidents that have done the same sort of thing, and I think it denigrates the position and it diminishes their ability to lead and to craft policy. He hasn't done that. He has no clear vision.
He had no idea what was in the stimulus bill. He had no idea what was in that Obamacare bill.
He didn't write it.
He didn't care. Just give me a bill.
Something. That's right. And I shudder to think, and this is not to denigrate any low-level employee, but the level of employee that put some of these things together, a bunch of clerks.
Right.
Who put it together, who wrote it, who plugged the numbers in, so this will work, and it hasn't. And he, go do it. All right, this is what we got. Go ahead and take it. I don't think he's a particularly bright individual. I don't know what his IQ is, but IQ doesn't
And we'll
mean
never know
anything.
until they release his college records.
I just don't think he hasn't seen and understood what the position requires.
Oh, by the way, speaking of that, the other day, I think it was at his long-delayed press conference or something. He was pounding on his one issue that Romney's got to release everything he ever done. He says we have a long tradition in this country that a candidate for president's history should be an open book. And then there's this long pause on financial matters.
Yeah. Oops.
Oops.
Did I just say something I shouldn't have said?
Yeah, when he's unscripted, he's dangerous.
Yeah.
Not as dangerous as the guy from Delaware, but
Still, he's. And then, when he's unscripted, he's dangerous. When he's scripted, he doesn't appear to be honest.
oh no, I know it. Yeah.
He just, when there's no believability in what he says. If Reagan was a great communicator, he's a great dunks in the corner. I don't know, lack of a better word, and I apologize for offending a president, but he just has no believability when he speaks. And part of it is, I don't think he believes half the things that he says, and the other half isn't true.
All right, and he's just pushing buttons in his
Yeah.
But to be running for re-election and your whole campaign is to make people scared of the guy you're running against, that's pretty self-indicting as in and of itself, it seems to me.
I can remember campaigns gone by that the candidate said, I'm running on my record. I'm running on what I've accomplished. Well, if you got nothing that you've ever accomplished, I guess there's nothing to run on, so you have to pick something else.
But it's an admission that he has nothing to run on, which is all you need to know. Hey, yeah, it was Ann Romney again. We're smart enough to know there are no easy solutions, but we're not dumb enough to think there aren't any different ones. Right?
And that was a good slide by for her. She's absolutely right. Some of the decisions a president has to make have to be tough decisions, but they have to be grounded in fact. They have to be grounded into the degree of success that it's going to have, and we haven't had that. We're not even treading water. We're backsliding. And it's a sin that we get put in this kind of position as a nation, because if it takes 3 years or 4 years to get you in the rut, it takes you 8 or 10 to get out of it. And the rut we're in,
more than that,
is not one that we needed to be in.
I mean, we've had 4 straight years of $1 trillion deficits, trillion plus. I don't know if you, on Facebook the other night I said, are you better off now than you were $5 trillion ago?
Somebody said no with about a trillion O's following it. No, we're not. We're not better off, and the lack of a plan that he's putting out there now isn't going to help. You can't survive on the ability of government to provide you things. You can survive on the ability of government to allow you to be successful, and we don't have that. I don't think there's a person in this country right now that Obama doesn't have a plan or a program for to do something for you. Okay? Because when he opens his mouth, he's going to do something for somebody else and he's doing it to everybody. He's taking it away from them. Just doesn't. He doesn't see that. You know, Soviet Russia fell apart economically because of the economic plan that they had, and I think he's
And you were
modeled
there?
it. I was there, and I think he's trying to model ours on the same plan of failure. You know, if there's no incentive to do something, people aren't going to do it.
Was it Ryan? Boy, there were so many good lines in this convention. Obama wants everything to be free except us.
Boy, talk about summing something up in 10 or fewer words. That's absolutely correct. That's absolutely correct. You know, we are regulated to death. You know, everything that you possess has some sort of regulation on. And the sad thing about that is there has to be a department to oversee that those regulations are carried out. And those are non-productive positions. Those are positions that require an expense with nothing coming in to support them, except raising your taxes and taking money out of your pocket. And it's throughout the economy and throughout our society, we have those things. And it's just gotten worse and worse and worse. We need to have someone to ensure that our country is safe. You need to have a military. You need to have the roads to transport yourself and your goods to and from a free market. And you need to be able to go to your tap and tap water and have fresh water come out to provide you with that. And so many of these other things are not necessary to be regulated and controlled and created by the government. Government should not be a creation of wealth. It should be a protection for wealth.
Yeah. Now, the ego has landed. Honoring Neil Armstrong by posting a picture of yourself taken 4 months ago looking at the moon. I'll leave it at that. Today is Friday, what, August 30th?
31st.
31st? Is it the 31st?
Tomorrow's the 1st, yeah.
Wow. And I believe Neil Armstrong's funeral is today. Mm-hmm. Which is kind of neat because today's the full moon and the blue moon.
That's right.
Once in a blue moon. So
right.
I don't know whether they stalled it for that reason or not. But it's
the blue moon or his funeral?
Well, the full moon, but having the funeral.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I didn't think it's.
But it's certainly appropriate.
And they're having a number of specials on the Science Channel and the History Channel this weekend about Neil Armstrong.
But you know, I mean, he died, or they announced his death on Saturday. I remember it was just before I went to the 4 o'clock mass. I posted my RIP. And you know, by Monday it was already pushed off a drudge. It was already old news. And you know, there's a guy who is not getting the credit he deserves. I think, frankly, he's forgotten. I mean, we're in our 60s now, Gavin, and at least I am, and
yes, I guess I are too.
And we were kids, so everybody born after us never even saw it, or if they did, they don't remember it. And it was certainly the greatest television event of our time, and probably the greatest event of our lifetimes. When you get right down to it.
I was working at the Boy Scout camp at Woolworth Lake, and we all got into the handicraft lodge over there. We had a small black and white TV with rabbit ears on top of it, and we watched it. And you could have heard a pin drop in this camp. There was 250 kids, 11 to 16 in there, and there was not a word said when we watched this.
Everybody was holding their breath.
It's just absolutely, you didn't know. But you know, listening to what he has said over the years and what he has written, what people have written about him, that's how he wanted it. He was a reluctant hero. He was like a Medal of Honor winner, the guy who says, "Oh, I didn't do anything anybody else would have done."
Right.
And that's how he felt, and that's how he conducted himself throughout his life. Yeah,
he is the quintessential example of the small town hero. Here's a guy, came from, his father was a low-level bureaucrat in the state government or something. There was nothing remarkable, but when he was like 6 years old, his father took him to a fair and took him for riding an airplane.
He said, "This is what I want to do."
Yeah, and I mean, of all things, he goes into aerospace engineering in the late 40s on a program. It was a Navy deal where he would go to college for 2 years, then do his term of service, and then finish college
like
and stay. And then he still owed the Navy some time. Well, he does his first 2 years of college. The Korean War breaks out, and he flew. It was an incredible number of missions, like 80-something combat missions in the Korean War. Crash landed I don't know how many times. And to him it was nothing. He was just doing his job, just a guy doing his job, and becomes one of the the great pilots of the 50s, X-15 pilot and stuff like that. He flew with Chuck Yeager, who didn't have a whole lot of respect for the college boys, as you know, because
he was not a college boy.
He was not a college boy himself.
Jockey.
And he I don't know if you saw this story. He had some fun with Armstrong, who was a bit younger than him. They wanted them to try out some lake bed out in California at Edwards to see if it was suitable for landing the X-15 or whatever, and so the two of them go out together, and Armstrong is the pilot and Yeager's the co-pilot, and Yeager's having them go down these places where the mud is so thick that the plane gets stuck. They had to haul the plane out. Oh, jeez. And he's doing it on purpose.
College
hey, you're a college boy, you're a big star engineer. But his coolness under fire, both militarily and civilly, was just exactly what was needed for the job. I mean, he flying that tinfoil lunar landing module. It's just amazing when you think about it.
It's a tin can.
It was less than a tin can. It was literally tinfoil, And I guess they decided that he was going to be the first guy to walk on the moon because he had the least ego of any of the astronauts, and it showed. I mean, he came back. He did his duty as a hero. Went through all the congratulatory stuff, but never ever blew his own horn. Didn't like doing it, but he did it, because it was expected of him.
Down now, and over the astronaut.
And yeah. Then over the years, he left the space program fairly early after that, but he would come back when it was required. He would come back for the important anniversaries of the moon landing. He occasionally testified before Congress about this or that. When the Challenger exploded, he was put on the commission by Reagan to look into it, and he did that. Very competent in business, but about 10 years after the moon landing, he's still a young man. He just bought a farm and stayed there the rest of his life, pretty much.
Now, did you see where he is contended, and I guess they proved that his quote was incorrect?
Yeah. That he actually did say it
small
correctly.
Step for a man,
right.
One giant step for mankind.
Yeah.
But if you're talking
so much for voice-activated microphones.
Yeah. Back in the old days, you got anything back from there. But a lot of that comes out when you watch the movie Right Stuff. I mean, you can see how these first rocket jocks were on there, and how much they learned on the job, because the guys were putting stuff together were only a half a step ahead of them, and how dangerous their job was. I think we were pretty fortunate through the first years of the program. Everything pretty much went according to plan. There was no major catastrophes, unlike what happened in Russia a number of times. and we got very accustomed.
Yeah, none
to
in the
being
air
successful.
anyway. Yeah.
And it's just amazing. But he was a very humble man who had a job, who did his job, and he took satisfaction, and he did the job.
Did it as well as anybody ever did, you know?
Yeah. And I think probably his biggest disappointment is that we've never really gone back and done anything beyond that in the last 20 years.
Well, yeah, oh yeah, and I mean he came out of deep retirement to testify in 2010 against the Obama space program, the refusal to go back to the moon, along with a bunch of other guys. But yeah, I mean when he felt it was his duty to his country to come out of his quiet little shell, he did. You know, just the perfect hero.
Yeah. You know, and when you think we haven't done it yet, but my son needs to get a TI 40 or some calculator for school for his math class. There's more power in that than what they were using the computers when they went to the moon.
I had a 16K TRS-80 Model 1 in 1979. Okay, 16K memory, not 16 gigabytes, not 16 megabytes, 16K of memory. And that had more power than Apollo 11 had. And I was reading one of these stories over the weekend. All these bells started going off that they'd never heard before as they're going in for the landing, and it was because Aldrin was double checking some figures, and it was overloading the computer.
Does not compute. Does not compute.
Yeah.
Oh, it's
they couldn't do two things at the same time.
Yeah.
I mean, wow. But I mean, he was a deeply personal man, and he kept it to himself. But the only sign of what he was thinking was when that reporter asked him, you know, a little bit after the moon landing, how he felt, you know, and what the future held for him. He says, in words or substance, he says, how do you think I would feel? He says, I'm 38 years old, and I know that nothing I do in my life from this day forward will ever be as interesting as what just happened.
Yeah. You peaked at an early age.
Yeah.
What are you going to do? But he'll be sorely missed. You know, I think he was an inspiration to a lot of kids of that generation to.
Boy, that's for sure.
To go into the sciences and astronomy and to look into what is all around us. You know, the Science Channel, Discovery Channel have all these programs on the universe now, and they show what these radio telescopes can do and how much they can pull in and the distances and the information they got. It's incredible. But it all began with these guys putting their self out on the line to do it. That, you know, inspired, and you hear these guys say it all the time. I was inspired by the original astronauts when they were test driving, you know, these vehicles and the things that they showed. And it's incredible when you look back at that grainy black and white footage that they show from all these things, you know. And we get a better picture now with your camera looking at the Taurus and Centaur up there.
But even within a couple of flights, the technology improved dramatically. You know, I think by the third landing, they were not only shooting in color; they had a camera set up so they could see the liftoff from the moon. But the first one was like, my God, it was like one of those old WRGB from the 30s cameras.
Jim Fisk doing squiggles on the show. Yeah, absolutely.
And I don't know if you remember this, but the first transmission from the moon was upside down and then they changed it electronically on the Earth. You know, it came in. You really couldn't. I mean, it was vague enough to begin with, but when he first turned the camera on, the stairs were going up instead of down. God,
times have changed.
It was so long ago now. It's hard to believe.
10 after.
Oh, so that's about it for the first hour. I think we'll wrap the first hour up, and when we get back, maybe we'll talk about school board and local issues and other things, and maybe what Michael's up to. I invited a guest here today. I don't know if he's going to be able to make it or not. So, and I always expect Pete Rose to walk in, but he's not here. So
I think they had some business down at the table when I came.
Oh, that's
came
true.
by
I'm
this
sure he's
morning.
working today. All right. Okay, we'll be back again shortly with more of the show with no name.